you think in terms of palmar and dorsal, in the direction of the palm, because as the forearm turns, the mobilization continues to turn, remember that? Okay. So any one of those intercarpal joints, they can be mobilized, okay? And stabilized distally. If extension is locked up here, we can dorsally glide the distal row of carpals. And yes, we go to our Maitland grades right here. We got grades 1, 2, 3, and 4. Fall back up. And again, that's this mobilization right here. Stabilized proximal, distal row is moving. Stabilized proximal, distal row is moving. Dorsal and dorsal. Okay. What joint is next on your guys' handout? First carpal metacarpal joint, the thumb, the thing that separates us from the apes. So that's our saddle joint we talked about. Look on the very back page of your guys' handout. There's some pictures there. There's a figure of an individual. Maybe the video camera wants to zoom into a handout. So that's not a bad idea. There's a picture of a rider on a horse. So noting as the rider slides forward and backwards, the glide is in the opposite direction. The rider's saddle is sliding, creating friction on the horse in the opposite direction of where they're leaning. In opposition to if the rider's on the horse this way and you slide side to side, that glide is in the same direction as the slide. Right? If you were literally on a horse or on a motorcycle, you would feel yourself sliding. It's the same exact thing. You're having difficulty understanding that. Ride a horse. Or ride a horse. Or a bike. Actually, this one on bike right this weekend, so getting off that. Okay. First metacarpal joint. Let's analyze those motions that are on your guys' handout. So we've got two different planes of motion occurring. We've got the palmar plane and the radial plane. Let's wrap our head around those different planes. The palmar plane, here's our palm. It's in the direction of the palm, up and down, palmar, abduction and adduction. Palmar, abduction, and adduction. Then we have the radial plane. Think about the radius in the ulna. Boom, they're laying flat. So we've got this motion, radial plane. And then we've got abduction and adduction occurring there as well, formerly known as flexion and extension. Okay? The older terminology tells you flexion, extension of the thumb. Newer terminology is going towards radial abduction and adduction. So adduction again closer to the midline of the forearm, abduction away from the midline of the forearm. And then palmar abduction away from the palm, adduction into the palm. Make sense to everybody? We've got to understand those basic planes in order to apply these glides. So the arthrokinematics in the radial plane, which aka flexion extension, right? That's our glide in the same direction. So we're trying to improve flexion or radial adduction. We're going to glide in an ulnar direction. Ulna's out here, right? Ulnar makes sense. Gliding that way. Radial abduction, radial glide in the direction of the radius, outward. Then we have our palmar abduction and adduction. Arthrokinematics are reversed, so if we're moving away from the palm with palmar abduction, we have to glide in the opposite direction, dorsal. Gliding that way. Palmar adduction, movement into the palm, gliding this way, palmar glide. Does that make sense? So palmar abduction, the glide goes the opposite direction. Palmar adduction, the glide goes the opposite direction. Yes? Well, think about that as we perform these mobilizations. Near her thumb here, bones on the outside. We're going to want to stabilize the trapezium and our mobilizing force, or points of tactile application there, is going to be at the base of the first metacarpal. So we'll mobilize the carpo metacarpal joint, CMT. Okay? So say that we're trying to improve flexion. This is the orthokinematics we're seeing as these bones overlie her hand. And then when her thumb extends, we can see these bones moving as well in that orthokinematic direction. Same direction. So our glide is going to look like that. As we stabilize here, that's what's happening. Right? To perform our Palmer glide. Feel free to huddle around and grab a so we're gliding in the same direction. Yeah, this is technically an ulnar glide. Okay, I misspoke. That was not a Palmer glide. So we're gliding in the same direction to improve flexion at the carpal metacarpal joint. We're gliding in the ulnar direction, ulnar glide, down. Wherever the ulna is, out there, if the wrist turns, then we glide down, still towards the ulnar glide, versus a radial glide, outward. That's what we're experiencing, right? I'm stabilizing proximally trapezium. I'm mobilizing distally here at the first metacarpal base of that. And we can go through all of our glide grades. And it does not take a whole lot of force to create these movements. Okay? So get rid of that. Then we can kind of get more of a accurate feel for where some of those things are on her. Radial and ulnar. And with these small bones and joints of the hand, you can really get away with kind of doing some pushing and pulling. So, some of the other techniques that we talk about, like always pushing, that's definitely for larger joints. You can definitely get away with